Welcome to the Momentum Matters podcast, where we have courageous conversations with women leaders. You'll hear about their accomplishments, their experiences, their challenges, and best advice. If you are inspired by women who have overcome the barriers and gone on to do extraordinary things, you are in the right place. All right, I am here on Momentum Matters with my friend Cindy Martin. And Cindy, I want to thank you so much for coming in and talking with us today. Cindy is the founder of Bham now and Bama Buzz and Hville Blast, and queen of all things digital and media in Alabama and beyond. So we are really anxious to hear about your trajectory, learn about your background, and kind of how you got started on this crazy journey that we're doing together. So welcome.
Thank you for having me, April. It has been a crazy journey, mostly very fun, and I'm honored to be here on the Momentum podcast.
Great, thanks. So I wanted to get started just asking you a little bit about your background and where you grew up and how you ended up here in Birmingham.
Sure. So I am a native of Bessemer, Alabama. And when I grew up in Bessemer, it was really a sweet suburban town.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the people there worked at US Steel, or my dad actually worked at the University of Alabama and commuted. It was a beautiful, safe neighborhood. I still have friends from there. And went to college at the University of Alabama as expected because of the tuition break from parents working there. And my father encouraged me to major in engineering because I was decent at math and science. And this was approaching the 80s. I was in college from 80 to 84. And construction and engineering jobs were the place to make a living. And my parents were very set on, you will make your own money, you will make your own career and set you up for success. So that was my first path at Alabama.
Were you the only female in engineering at the time?
I think there were 3 in the total engineering school of about 100.
Wow.
And I was in mechanical engineering. And I will say it was extraordinarily difficult. It was quite a change from high school, but like people who survive engineering school, I buckled down and I would study or work 6 hours a day. My undergraduate was not a frivolous time of parties, no sorority. I really worked, and I was determined to graduate with the best possibility of preparing myself for a career.
Yeah. My daughter is in engineering right now at
Beautiful.
UA. And
yeah.
I can attest to the
rigor.
buckle. The rigor is unbelievable.
It really is.
Unbelievable.
But the good thing about it, I never really wanted to work as an engineer. The rigor of the engineering and the teaching of logic and teaching of problem solving, it's going to support your daughter and whoever goes for any career they choose.
That's true.
Still use principles from it.
For sure. For sure. And the curiosity and the problem solving
That's
is
right.
Really, really fantastic. My dad, as you know, was a mechanical engineer.
I remember.
And he's always looking for the better way,
right,
to do something or to approach something.
Yes,
and
I think it drives people around us a little crazy. Like, okay, this is good. What can we do to make it just a little better?
Just a little better. And I want to go back to this idea of you being three women in the entire School of Engineering. Did you feel that you were still supported by the program and by your professors, or were there people that were just doubting that you could even finish?
Oh, well, there was a lot of curiosity around me. So I think that I stood out a little bit. I don't see that as a bad thing, right. but I think I felt that pressure that I've got to perform because I am a little bit unusual in this setting. So I think it made me work extra hard. And I believe that, there were times when I would get comments about I remember in one setting, we were having a class project, and one of the guys said, Cindy, you're so smart. I want you to be my personal secretary when you graduate.
Oh, did you say you can't afford me?
So, I remember, and even professors, sometimes I didn't get immediately invited into graduate school, even though I graduated third in the class. And I noticed they were meeting with other guy students and encouraging them to apply. And I think even though I didn't want to go that route, I would have appreciated that encouragement.
Right. You had to make your own.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
And so after you graduated, what was your next step?
So I decided to go into the MBA program at Alabama, which really is an excellent program.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of people advise you not to do that. Wait, take a break. Don't go straight into graduate school. My thought process was, I'm on a train track here. And I felt like if I left and started making money, to leave that to study all the time again would be too big of a life change for me. So I decided, let's just keep this train going.
Okay.
And so I enrolled in the MBA program at Alabama, and I learned a whole new world of how businesses run. I found that the business students were a lot more fun than engineers.
Really?
So we had an MBA party every Friday night. And I'm like, the engineering students never had engineering parties. Maybe they've loosened up a little bit now. So I learned some social skills. I learned that I really enjoyed the marketing and business running side. That I got a lot of excitement from that. And I knew immediately I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And I just didn't know how. We built a small business when I was actually an undergrad called Hangovers Video. And our theory was we would go to sororities and fraternities. We would do a videotape of their parties and sell it to them. Guess what? It didn't work too well.
No.
The young party crowd didn't want to be videoed.
Right.
Yeah.
Too much proof.
That's right. But it was a fun experiment.
I like the name.
Yeah.
Cute. And so let's continue down this path about the entrepreneurial mindset. You did go on to work for some pretty big outfits. And so talk to us a little bit about that decision. And then when did you make the decision to go out on your own?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say there was a professor in graduate school, Dr. Ray Mellichamp, who was a pivot point for me.
Okay.
I worked as an intern for him, and he had a relationship with corporate AT&T, which at the time was one of the biggest firms in the world, 300,000 people. And he would ante up a student every year to work as an intern for AT&T. And this was right when AT&T was going through divestiture. So I was really excited to have the internship over the summer of my MBA school. I drove to Florida, Orlando, didn't know anyone, and I worked in one of their data center operations. And I enjoyed it a lot. I had no expectation that I would get a permanent job from AT&T because they were immediately laying off thousands of people for divestiture. However, I got a call back. They offered me a job, and what attracted me to the position, April, was that it was part of what they called a leadership continuity program. Mm-hmm. And they laid out a plan for me, and it said, we want to invest in you, and we want to give you different experiences through this giant corporation and for your learning, and also to see how you do. Every 6 months, you're going to do something different. And then you're going to be on a path for fast promotion. And we want you to grow and to be a vice president of the company.
Wow.
So I had
out of the gate.
It felt so good that there was a company that wanted to invest in my future as opposed to here's your job, do it, and good luck.
Right. And so how long were you with them?
I stayed with AT&T 9 years and a lot of churn. I was relocated to their corporate headquarters in New Jersey. And when I first started, though, I was still in Orlando, and they put the new kid on the midnight shift. So my job in a new city was to supervise data center technicians. They were mostly men, 50 to 65, working midnight to 8 a.m.
And you were how old?
I was 26. Yes. So I had several gentlemen, and I will say they were so kind to me. They could have had a lot of fun, but personally, it was very hard because I didn't know people in the community, and I was working really, really weird times. I was real happy when that assignment ended.
Right. And how did you meet your husband, Cliff?
We met in Orlando.
Okay.
Yes, we had a common friend. We went to a same church, and we went out to lunch, and that was it.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Amazing. And then, okay, so you were with AT&T for 9 years.
That's right.
Did you make it to vice president?
Well, I left before that point.
Okay.
Now, I did get promoted twice in the interim there. AT&T was going through just massive reorganization. I had a different boss every year, and the people who had hired me in for the program left the company, and this happens.
Yeah.
However, I had some fantastic experiences. So I moved to New Jersey, and I chose to work on projects that gave me a lot of joy and excitement. One of those was their very first email service for AT&T. And I supervised a team of 100, and they were union employees running the service center for AT&T email.
Wow.
Which was so much fun. And that was really the foray into my love of internet and digital, because I saw the power of the communications and just the imagination of what this could do for the community. I volunteered to be on the team that started AT&T's very first dial-up internet service. So this was even before AOL.
Wow.
And this was so much fun. This was in the time where companies wanted to put content behind a firewall and you would subscribe to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the AOL model, and there were other companies, Genie, Delphi, Prodigy, CompuServe, that would give you an email address, and then you would register and get access to all the content behind the firewall.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting the time that you and I grew up in, to have lived on both sides of that digital age.
That's right.
And that we still have all of these experiences because we were becoming adults.
We were in the analog world, in a physical analog
world.
And then seeing the massive transformation. I think, we've lived in the most exciting time, in my opinion, because we've seen how radically the world can change with technology.
That's right. And you've been on really the bleeding edge of that.
I've loved
that change.
I have loved it. It goes back to the curiosity and learning and staying challenged, and getting in the internet businesses. You have to stay on your toes, and you have to just constantly love to learn and grow.
So tell us about your transition then to AL.com.
Yes. Right. As part of my role at AT&T, I got to meet a lot of people in the US and beyond that were building content. So that included the Advanced Publications Group, which owned all of Alabama's newspapers and newspapers in 30 different states.
Okay.
And I also had the opportunity to meet people in California that were building different products and content products. And I had an offer to help start a search engine in California. And it was an opportunity that I could not say no to. It was the pinnacle of what I could possibly imagine. because as we knew, search was the door opener to the
Right.
entire internet for the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made the decision to leave AT&T, and I moved to Sausalito, California, and I was the VP of sales and marketing for Magellan, one of the first 5
That's right.
search engines.
That's right. And they were bought by
Excite.
Excite.
That's right.
That's
So
right.
it was short.
Yeah.
And it was a short, very intense time. People worked 7 days a week. We had little cots in the room where people would take naps.
Naps.
They pretty much lived there.
Yeah.
It was intense, but it was also very exciting.
It was a race.
It was a crazy race. So
Yeah.
we were racing to go public. A lot of other companies were racing to go public, and Excite had bubbled up and they wanted to beat us. So they had their banker approach our company and say, Excite wants to take you over and fold you into their going public. And I think at the time they had gotten bigger than we were. So the owner, I was not an owner. I had some ownership, but the majority owner decided we're going to do this.
Wow.
So I had the benefit of going through the entire prospectus process, and that's onerous, but
Yes.
I learned how to do that, and I saw the rapid transition for the change. We even went to New York and pitched bankers on Magellan going public. So I got an insight into a world I had never seen.
Right. That's really exciting. And so from California, you then got an offer from AL.com, or how did that
Well,
happen?
we got bought by Excite. I had an opportunity to stay with Excite, but also got a call from a contact that I had made at Advanced Publications. I think they probably had seen that Excite had bought us. I don't know. But a gentleman there that I got to know said, Cindy, we're thinking of starting an internet business in Alabama. And you were the first person that came to mind, knowing that you're from there and that you've got this wealth of experience behind you. Are you interested? And this was a very important pivot point for me. And all decisions we make are trade-offs.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely loved the thrill of the startup community in San Francisco and the creativity. You would go out to dinner and you would hear every table would be talking about what they were building,
Right.
or ideas they had. And it was so much fun.
It's a different energy.
So
completely.
much energy and creativity. And I really relished that. And on the flip side, I also knew my parents were getting older. My parents lived in Bessemer, and I missed them. I missed Alabama. So I flew back to give it a little bit of thought, and I flew into Huntsville.
Okay.
Because Huntsville was the techiest city in Alabama, maybe still it's the techiest city, one of the techiest in the US. And the one night that I stayed here, I got a call from my mother, and she was crying, and she said, Cindy, your dad has cancer.
Okay.
So if my mind wasn't made up, it was made up then.
Mm-hmm.
And California just didn't hold a light to my mother in distress and my dad having cancer.
Sure.
So I took the job, and this is before AL.com even had a name. It was just, we're going to have an internet service in Alabama, and you're going to have access to newspaper content and build a company. So I wrote the business plan. I had the benefit of hiring everybody from scratch, finding office space. I worked out of my house for the first several months building AL.com.
Was there a blueprint for this in other
There was
places?
NewJersey.com was alive.
Okay.
And it was so much part of corporate that it had a lot of oversight. So the fun part for me is AL.com was out on its own. And I really enjoyed just the carte blanche, build it.
Right.
Now we did have operations in New Jersey. So I didn't have to worry about the website being built or the technology or HR. It was really more of hire the content people, hire the sales people, make this a profitable business, all the fun stuff.
Right. And so how quickly did it grow?
It really took off. And I'll say, our relationships with the newspapers helped that tremendously because we were able to advertise in the newspapers, which were very strong. This was 1997. And we got a warm reception. Companies that understood what we were doing wanted to jump on and advertise. I had a sales director at the time, and I remember we were on the phone before we ever launched AL.com. We called up companies in Alabama out of the blue. We told them what we were doing, and we had 5 launch sponsors coming out of the gate when we opened up the website.
Wow.
And we were the only business of the advanced group to do that.
Did you have to explain? I mean, I imagine there was a great deal of education that had to happen.
Some people quickly understood it.
Okay.
So, in Huntsville, we had several sponsors right off the bat. And I don't know if I can remember all of them, but Intergraph was one.
Okay.
Bruno's Grocery was one. Books A Million was one.
Oh, yeah.
So we had several larger companies that are like, absolutely, you're building a media company and you're going to have access to the content from the newspapers plus. And we know this is going to be huge. We want to be part of it.
Wow. And how many were on your team?
We started with about 5, and we ended with 60.
Wow.
When we created a new company. One other fun point is we didn't have the URL al.com. We started off with the name Alabama Live for anybody who was living at the time in 1997, 98.
Yeah.
And I worked with a lawyer out of New York to find the URL AL, and it was owned at the time by a Chinese firm using it for email. And we were able to get it for a song. And at the time, having a 2-letter URL was precious.
Right.
So
still
precious.
Still is. Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. And so what was the transition then from AL.com to Alabama Media Group?
Yeah. So my team that we built with AL.com was absolutely fantastic. I was able to attract some of the top talent in the world, or at least in Alabama.
Right.
We'll say in the world too. We were very successful. We had extremely low turnover. We were profitable. We built our business into a $20 million company in 16 years. The corporate ownership made the decision in several pockets of the country to form a new company and to close the existing companies. So at the time, the Birmingham News, the Huntsville Times, the Mobile Register were their own P&L companies, and AL.com was its own company. So a new company was born, and that was Alabama Media Group. This was a time of massive change, and I had the honor of being the president of the company. And so my job was to really manage that P&L and to build this new company. I had a peer who was running operations for the business, and this was headquartered out of Birmingham. And I think we covered this in the news at the time. So, we immediately had to do massive layoffs. So there were hundreds of people let go or not invited to the new company.
Okay.
And that was incredibly stressful for my team and for me.
Mm-hmm. And was that around the time of the .com bust?
No, this was 2012.
Okay.
I think there were probably a few .com busts.
Right.
2009, I
you
think,
even got through the recession.
Yes,
then.
we
Right.
did.
Yeah, that's rough. So I'm really interested in hearing about your attitude or your outlook on taking risk Because to hear you tell the story in retrospect, it just sounds like exciting and challenging for sure, but you make it sound so easy. And so I'm curious about, like, how did you manage the risk side of all of this?
I enjoy thought out risk.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't say at all that I'm flippant with risk, but if I'm too comfortable, if I'm too comfortable, I would be uncomfortable.
Okay.
So I love the challenge. To me, when you're given a huge challenge, it forces you to grow and it forces you to question a lot of things that you might have gotten mentally stagnant with. So I just enjoyed it all. Stress, yes, sleepless nights, absolutely. With Alabama Media Group, there was also a huge community impact, which was negative, especially on the older community that depended, like my father, read the newspaper cover to cover every single day.
Right.
And I had to tell him, and he was in his mid-80s, Dad, you're not going to get that newspaper every day anymore.
It's going away.
I remember grown men crying when I went around the state and spoke to different clubs and rotaries, and they wouldn't even know when their friends died because they would check the newspaper for obituaries. Right. So I wasn't happy about that part. This was mentally and culturally extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah. And what was the shift from Alabama Media Group to starting Bham now, and help our listeners understand the difference in those two models and the approach to media?
Absolutely. And this was a major shift. So I was the president of Alabama Media Group for about a year and a half, and it was clear to me, and I think to Advance, that this wasn't the perfect fit for me. Okay. And the reason is I love to build, I love digital, and this needed a real heavy lift on the newsprint side. So I left amicably in 2013. And it was the first time in my whole life that I had an open slate, that I didn't have something to do. I know I did have to take care of my dad because he was in mid-upper 80s with heart failure. My mother had passed away, so I was his caretaker. Wow. And I remember talking to my husband, and for me to get a similar role, we would have to move out of state. There just aren't that many big gigs in Alabama that are focused on digital media. Right. So we bought a little cabin in the woods, and it's very sweet. We still have it. We still live in Birmingham, but I whittled the time away painting I think I painted the cabin like 3 or 4 times. Taking a couple of months and just decompressing was healthy for me. I liken it to falling off of a crazy roller coaster ride. So at first it was just a feeling of not knowing and mental unsteadiness, because I've never been in a situation where I wasn't on, 10 hours a day since college. So it was a combination of times of being contemplative, refreshing, relaxing, and then after a couple of months, it was, I've got to get busy. Do something. Yeah. So we decided I can't move because my dad is here, and I couldn't do that to him. Yeah. I saw a company bubbling up. I started scouting around. The great thing about the internet is there are no secrets. True. You can figure out just what people are doing from a media standpoint. I saw a business in Charlotte called Charlotte Agenda, and it had I watched it from the time it was being built, and I paid attention to it for about a year. And I saw that it was growing really fast, and their model was focused on excitement. And their model at the time was focused on sponsored content. And at the same time, Birmingham was changing. Birmingham was popping up out of the dust, literally.
Yes.
Avondale mushroomed with Avondale Brewery and all the shops and restaurants. Railroad Park opened up. The Barron's Field moved to downtown. The Rotary Trail was buzzing. Restaurants, people were going back downtown.
Right.
And it was a very cool, exciting time. And I thought, if this guy can do it in Charlotte, I can do it in Birmingham. And it was literally a snap decision.
Mm.
And I felt so compelled that I had zero doubt that I was going to immediately build this. Actually, I called your dad for advice.
Did you?
I have a lot of respect for him. I called two people for advice, and he was one of them. And I still remember Tom saying, because I said, should I like write out a business plan? Should I present it to a board of advisors? And Tom said, Cindy, you know what you're doing. Just do it.
I was going to say, he probably told you just to get out a cocktail napkin and write it on the back, and
so
that
just
would be sufficient.
Do it.
Yes.
And I think those words of confidence was what I needed, because even if you've been an executive for 20 plus years, you still reach these points where, am I good enough for this?
Sure.
Can I do this? I've never started my own company. So that was the beginning of Bham Now. And a quick story on how we really formed it. I went to an agency in town and I mapped out the website requirements and the goal, and here's what I want to do and what I want to build. And I told him, I've got $15,000.
Not a lot.
Not a lot of money, but I was raised by Depression parents.
Yes.
And it is in my blood that you will not lose money.
Right.
And the agency came back, very sweet fellow and friend, and he said, I'd be a lot happier if you had $85,000. So I went home and I told my techie husband, Cliff, he wants $85,000. Cliff was still employed, working for Bell Labs remotely from here. And he put his head down and he didn't speak for 3 days. And over the weekend, he built the website for Bham Now. He added all the plugins that you needed for WordPress and for ad delivery and all kind of tools. And he said, there's your website.
Wow. And it wasn't $85,000.
It was zero. It was embedded costs from a very smart, dear husband.
That's fantastic. What a great story.
And staying on the theme of not losing money, I decided to, at first I thought about raising money. I talked to a couple of people who were going to, give me $100,000. And then I kind of felt down in my gut, and I thought about my parents, and also any new business is risky.
Right.
So I'm weighing the risk. I didn't want to be in a position where I had to write checks that I had lost back to friends for $100,000. So I hired 5 interns from UAB, Samford, Birmingham Southern, and I had these 5 interns start writing and populating the website. At the same time, I put together the concept of what we were building, which was a media that was going to focus on positivity, excitement, all the things that traditional media were ignoring. Wouldn't cover politics, we wouldn't cover crime, and we were really focused on creating a feeling like you're sitting with your friend and your next door neighbor, and you've got the scoop that you just can't wait to share with them.
Yeah. And it's very interesting. It's engaging reading. It's all what is new and what is happening
That's
and what's
right.
exciting.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love it.
We really, if it's something opening, we're on top of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, we do cover civic too. You know, if we need to connect, if somebody is in need or help, we will many times write about how to help the situation. But we're not fire chasers. We're not crime chasers.
And I love that. You're not trading on people's adrenaline or their fear.
That's right.
You're trading on their joy.
Yes.
And their passion.
Yes. And we felt like people needed this break too. Yeah. I mean, look at today. Can't we all enjoy a little mental break? We need it.
We do.
Need it.
We do.
So I continued to populate with these very sweet, dear interns, and two of them continued to stay with me. One of them became an AE for 5 years, and he did a fabulous job. One of them, you know, Gabby Hembry-Lee, still here. She's our business development director.
And an upward graduate.
Upward graduate.
That's
yes.
Right.
She learned so much from that program.
Oh, yeah. She's fantastic. What advice do you have for any of our listeners who may be on that sort of cusp of considering a big change, and they're maybe a little hesitant to take that leap?
You know, it is a hard leap. And I do believe that many people will take it without appropriate thought or counsel. And while I love the energy of startups, I love the energy of building, there can be a lot of wasted money if it isn't appropriately thought through. I think in my situation, I had years of experience, which gave me this strong, almost they say your unfair advantage. That was my unfair advantage. So I would ask yourself, what is your unfair advantage? What gives you the unique opportunity to build this business, this consultancy? How are you different than available options? I would also suggest, like I did reaching out to your dear father, Tom Patterson, seek advice from people who have been successful in building businesses before. And to me, this is the most important, one of the most important things I've learned throughout my career is be careful who you take advice from. Mm-hmm. Your best friend might not have the best advice for your startup. Your cousin, your parents, you know, there are many people I adore and I respect, but I'm not going to go to them for a startup business unless they've got proven experience in doing something similar in a successful way.
Right. We have an approach at Momentum called a personal board of directors, and you have to be very careful about who you ask to sit at that table. And it's not all your best friends. You know, you do need your coach, you need your cheerleader, but you also need your critic, and you also need your, you know, top advisor. And yeah, it's just really important who we invite to that table, isn't it?
Very much so.
Yeah. Well, Cindy, I really want to thank you for coming in today. This has been a delightful conversation, and I think very, very helpful for a lot of our listeners to hear from someone so successful and so ahead of her time. And you continue to surprise us.
It's so much fun and it's been a challenge to recreate myself in the business. It's also been very free because it's been the opportunity to create a media company for consumers now and in the future and not having to worry about a legacy past.
Yes.
And now we're 35 full-time employees, Huntsville and Birmingham. Wow. We employ several interns and part-timers, and we're profitable.
That's amazing.
Boom.
Boom. And so what's next? Give us a little sneak preview. What's on the horizon?
You know, we have not at all peaked with our media company. There's tremendous interest in what we're doing, not only for consumers, but clients and advertisers. consumers are not moved by flashy ads anymore.
Mm.
I find it fascinating from a psychological and technological point to think about what influences general consumers to choose to do business with a company.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes into our makeup of how we create campaigns, and it's complicated, is also fun. So even continuing to dive into that more and creating content that gives true value to your audience in a way that folds in your client is a fantastic puzzle to figure out. So I'm not bored with that. And we're continuing to expand and grow the Bama Buzz. We're continuing to really build the resources of our teams. Another thing when you're asking what is next is, as we know, the internet is fluid.
Mm.
Is TikTok going to stay around? I don't know.
Who knows?
We've got the biggest TikTok in Huntsville and Birmingham and the largest Instagrams. And, we've got to constantly evolve and think of different products, different services we could add. So it is really fun and challenging.
Awesome. We can't wait to see where it all goes.
Well, thank you. I hope you're part of it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Momentum Matters. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast as we share more important conversations with women leaders. We would love for you to rate our show and share with others in your life. This episode of Momentum Matters was produced by Social U and brought to you by America's Thrift Stores, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama, Protective Life, and Regions Bank. A full list of corporate partners can be found at momentumleaders.org. We also want to thank the individual donors, Momentum members, and volunteers for their commitment to our mission.